I'm O.W. Root, and this is Pleasant Peninsula. This past week, I was up in the UP for a story that's going to come out in a couple weeks, and the weather was bad driving up to the bridge. And you can tune in to this radio station, and they'll give bridge updates. And you can check on the website as well, Mackinaw Bridge Authority or something like that. And on the radio, they give this update, and it's delivered in the creepiest way possible. I mean, can you have a more disturbing voiceover? It's something to the effect of, icy conditions are continuing. Limit your speed to 20 miles per hour. Motorists are warned to proceed with caution.
Reduce your speed to a maximum of 20 miles per hour. Stay in the right-hand lane. Be alert and exercise appropriate caution.
It sounds like you came out of a bunker, and it's an apocalyptic scene. And also at the end of this recording, it repeats. It says, this
message will repeat as long as these icy conditions exist. Thank you.
Then it repeats. And there's this humming behind it too, this whoo, this disturbing sort of feedback that keeps coming. It sounds apocalyptic, really. And it is so creepy. And in that way, it's a little disturbing. But it's also appreciated, honestly. You know, we want everything to be so happy and so emoji-fied these days that hearing some recording that sounds like it was from some 60s movie about the apocalypse is actually refreshing. We need some more seriousness. We need some more scary voiceover warnings these days. But it was bad weather driving up to Mackinaw City. And of course, right when we got to Mackinaw City, the sky opened up and it was blue. You could see the sun crossing over the bridge. The winds were not very high. The ice was not bad. It was a beautiful drive. We had nothing to worry about, even though the message was the most disturbing one possible. And it's incredible because, seriously, 20 miles out of Mackinaw City, I was concerned. I really was. It was practically a whiteout. And then it was beautiful. You know, there's that saying that we always say, if you don't like the weather, something effective, if you don't like the weather in Michigan, just wait an hour and it'll change. That story is a good example of that adage. Club Manitou. Does that ring any bells? It might not, but it should, because Club Manitou was an infamous mob-run Prohibition-era speakeasy in Harbor Springs. It sounds hard to believe, but it's totally true. The Purple Gang ran Speakeasy and Casino underneath the house in Harbor Springs, in little classic, iconic Harbor Springs that looks like it belongs on a postcard. There was a mob-run speakeasy underneath the house, with dancing and drinking and gambling back during Prohibition. There's so many details to this story. As with all these mob stories and stuff from that era, everything was so clandestine and covered up. There's so many details that are fascinating that we could get into, but I could talk for hours about this. But the thing that's really fascinating about this, there's two things that are fascinating about Club Manitou. The first one is the tunnels. Well, I guess the first actually really is, there's really three things. The first is that there was a mob-run speakeasy under a house in Harbor Springs back in the Prohibition era. But the second one is the tunnels. There are tunnels all around the property. I've been in these tunnels. I've been down into the basement. How you get in is there's a screen door outside. You open a screen door, then you open a steel door, and you walk down these long stairs. You get to another steel door. You open that steel door, and you walk into a basement, this big basement, and retro tiles, huge fireplace, a bandstand, a stage where you have live music, a kitchen in the back, a safe that is all rusted out. It looks like it belongs on the Titanic in the bottom of the bottom of the ocean. There's still old Prohibition era bottles down there with the molded text into the glass that says not for reuse, resale. In these tunnels, how you get to these tunnels is you just keep walking. This basement it's cavernous. It just keeps opening up and opening up. And you keep walking through smaller and smaller rooms. And there's these steel doors that close behind you if you want them to. You don't close them, because there's a locking system that an ancient locking system where if they wanted these things closed, they were closed. But you just keep walking and walking, and there's rubble. You know, it almost feels like a military compound. It feels like you discovered a military compound. And you get to the end of one of these short little tunnels and you see that's been sealed off. They've sealed it off since then. And the people who own it now and who are researching Club Manitou have drilled holes through these walls to see which ones are just walls and which ones were tunnels that are blocked off. And this tunnel system allegedly sprawls out beyond just the house. And this is where it gets really interesting. There's lore that there was a tunnel that ran from Club Manitou, from the second basement, a basement below the first basement, the standard basement. There's a tunnel that ran from the airport, which is right across the street, all the way to the second basement. And this tunnel was big enough for a car to be in it. I mean, that sounds crazy, but there's a group of people who are essentially researching the history of Club Manitou, and they're putting a whole bunch of stuff together, and they've talked to people who were around back then, who remember seeing through a manhole, because there are manholes and air vents that you can find all around the property. They remember seeing a car underground, and people have testified to this. But there's so much mystery as well. And when you're in these tunnels, I mean, it's fascinating to be there, to be in Club Manitou almost 100 years later. There's so much metaphor here. I mean, what's hidden beneath the surface is the obvious one. You know, you go down and that's where the gambling, that's where the drinking is, that's where the fun is, that's where they have all these tunnels, these hidden tunnels, and they've blocked them off. As we've moved out of that era, the tunnels are shut down. And so there's this obvious metaphor, what's hidden beneath the surface. But then past that, it's amazing to be down there and think and imagine the people walking through these back in 1929, 1930, 1931. I'm sure dressed great, of course. Drinking, gambling, all this stuff, having a great time in a world that was so different. No cell phones, no internet. A different world. But yet, they still want to have fun. And there's so many things to take from the story of Club Manitou. And there's so many more details to it. But what I think about with Club Manitou is what's hidden beneath the surface. There's always something there, even if it seems forgotten. And people want to have fun. People will try to find a way to have fun, whether it's in a basement back in 1930, going down the stairway, walking through the tunnels, taking a car from the airport to the second basement and getting up. And we a lot of times build the past into being some sort of time so different than now. People were so different. But in truth, they weren't that different. Maybe a little bit. But they still had some of the same desires we have today. And in a way, we can relate through time, relate to them through time and history. Next, I want to take a look at a reel from our Instagram. So let's roll that.
Hey, this is James Zanstra, and I am out on an undisclosed Michigan lake looking to catch a few fish today. Before I channel my inner Youper and head out onto the ice, we should talk a little bit about not falling in. Here's the deal. Not all ice is created equal. Clear, solid ice, that's the good stuff. It's like the filet mignon of ice. But cloudy or slushy ice, that's more like soggy leftovers. Cloudy ice has air bubbles trapped in it, which make it weaker. And slushy ice, it's what happens when ice gets lazy. It melts, it refreezes, and totally forgets its job. If you're walking on ice, you need about 4 inches of clear ice. If you're bringing the snowmobile, it's better to have 5 to 7 inches. And if you're planning to park your F-150, or in my case, Jeep on the lake, which is a bold move, make sure there's at least 12 to 15 inches of ice. Remember, Michigan lakes are trickier than they look. One spot can hold a truck while 10 feet away you're swimming with the fish. Clear ice and a little common sense, that's the recipe for a Michigan winter to remember. So stay safe, have fun, and we'll see you out on the ice.
So I love that reel because it's so informative. I don't know that stuff. I don't walk out on the ice all the time. I don't drive out on the ice all the time. I've been out on the ice maybe just a couple times in my life. So to have these hard numbers, these hard facts, is really helpful. And it makes me think about two things. The first is that winter is dangerous in Michigan. Summer has its own risks, of course, drowning, and people tragically drown every summer. But Michigan winters you've got ice on the roads. You can fall through the ice if you're out on the water. You can die in the cold, really, if you get stuck in the cold. It's a dangerous time of the year, and it can be a perilous place, especially the farther north you go. And that really underscores that. And the second thing is that it underscores the need to be prepared in winter. This is something that's different about winter than summer. In summer, you can just walk out the door, you can just grab your shoes, throw them on, boom, out the door, into the store, back in your car, back home, boom, no big deal. Winter's a lot different. You have to prepare a lot more, to put on a lot more stuff. You have to check the weather a lot more. There's just a lot more stuff that can go wrong, so you have to be more prepared. And knowing what you can and can't do, knowing what is and isn't safe, is part of being prepared. And that's what that reel gets at. If you know what you need, if you want to walk on the ice, or if you want to drive your snowmobile out on the ice, or you want to park your truck out on the ice, to know the exact details of what you need, that's called being prepared. And that will keep you safe during winter. And I love that reel because it's really almost a PSA. It's some hard facts about what's going to keep us safe in winter. And in Michigan, especially up north, that is very important. I'm O.W. Root for Michigan Enjoyer.